Welcome to History Revealed, where we unravel the forgotten origins of concepts that shape our modern world. Today, we journey back to a time when a simple promise could mean the difference between autonomy and subjugation. The ancient origins of freedom and servitude, indelibly etched into the very fabric of early human civilization by the profound mark of debt. Imagine the world millennia ago, long before the advent of coined currency or the rustle of official decrees. Humanity was emerging from nomadic existences, slowly gathering in fledgling settlements. The soft dawn light illuminates dust motes swirling above nascent marketplaces, vibrant hubs where communities first truly began to intertwine. Here, fundamental necessity birthed innovation, and from the constant hum of daily exchange, the very first whispers of obligation began to coalesce and take discernible shape. Observe a bustling scene. A farmer offers his surplus grain. A potter meticulously displays his finished wares. A weaver artfully barters her intricately spun cloth. These initial transactions were not governed by complex legal codes, but by an inherent understanding as fundamental as the rising sun itself. Trust was the invisible yet powerful currency, a silent, mutual agreement implicitly passed between individuals. When one farmer urgently needed seeds before his own harvest, or a resourceful craftsman required essential raw materials he couldn't immediately pay for, an unwritten covenant was subtly forged. "I will provide for you now," one might imply, "and you, in turn, will repay me in kind when your fortunes inevitably turn." This basic exchange, seemingly innocuous, carried immense and profound weight. It was the genesis of the first promise, a sacred bond built entirely on reciprocity and the unwavering expectation of future fulfillment. But what transpired when that deeply held promise faltered? What if the vital harvest failed, or the craftsman's kiln cracked, tragically ruining his entire output? This simple failure to uphold an agreement wasn't merely a matter of inconvenience. It struck directly at the very heart of community trust and the fragile economic stability upon which these societies rested. In these acutely vulnerable moments, when a crucial promise could not be met, the looming shadow of obligation began to lengthen ominously, hinting at a far darker, more personal consequence. The abstract concept of owing transitioned from a logistical challenge to an increasingly burdensome weight, transforming into a social contract with deeply personal implications that would eventually evolve into the harsh realities of debt and its profound impact on human liberty. This fragile equilibrium was the very crucible in which the fundamental notions of freedom and servitude would be inextricably forged. The delicate balance of reciprocal trust, so fundamental in nascent communities, was often brutally shattered under the relentless sun of ancient Mesopotamia. As societies grew more complex and agriculture became the cornerstone of burgeoning urban centers like Sumer, the stakes of failed promises escalated dramatically. The informal agreements of the earliest marketplaces solidified into codified laws, meticulously etched onto clay tablets, the first enduring records of human justice and, indeed, injustice. Here, in the Fertile Crescent, the concept of debt transformed from a personal inconvenience into a societal edifice capable of crushing individual liberty. Early legal codes, predating even Hammurabi's famous pronouncements, reveal a stark reality. If a farmer's crops withered due to drought or flood, if disease decimated his livestock, or if unforeseen misfortune struck his family, the consequences were severe. Without means to repay not only land and possessions, but freedom itself tragically became collateral. A debtor could be forced to sell himself or even members of his own family, a son, a daughter, a wife, into temporary servitude to satisfy powerful creditors. This was not chattel slavery in its broadest sense, but a profound form of bondage, often for a predetermined period, yet utterly devastating to those caught within its grasp. Imagine the heart-wrenching scene: a family, once proud cultivators of their land, now stripped of their dignity. Their faces, etched with despair and resignation, reflect the crushing weight of a system that offered little mercy. An official, perhaps a temple administrator or a powerful merchant, oversees their solemn transfer. The vibrant life of the Sumerian city, with its towering ziggurats and bustling streets, continues around them, indifferent to their plight. This was the harsh social contract of the age. Survival depended on fulfilling obligations, and failure often meant a forfeiture of personal autonomy. These ancient Mesopotamian chains were not wrought of iron, but of economic necessity and legal decree. They bound individuals not to physical shackles, but to the crushing burden of unfulfilled promises, turning human beings into assets to be temporarily leveraged. The records on those clay tablets, dry and impersonal, tell a profoundly human story of desperation, sacrifice, and the early bitter understanding that freedom could be a commodity, bought and sold in the unforgiving marketplace of survival. This somber chapter reveals how quickly abstract obligation could morph into concrete servitude, laying a chilling precedent for millennia to come. While Mesopotamia grappled with individual debt, where a farmer's misfortune could lead to personal bondage, ancient Egypt presented a different, yet equally formidable relationship with obligation. Here, the Nile was life, its predictable inundation requiring immense coordination. The pharaoh, seen as a living god, sat at the apex of a highly centralized state, controlling virtually all agricultural output. This wasn't merely about individual farmers owing grain. It was a grander system of state-imposed obligation, a public debt owed by the entire populace to the divine ruler. Vast granaries, towering structures for long-term storage and redistribution were the beating heart of this economy. Within their cool, dimly lit interiors, activity buzzed. Scribes, wielding reed pens, meticulously recorded every sack of grain brought in, every measure distributed. Their hieroglyphic ledgers were not just financial records, they were the very arteries of the state, ensuring surplus for lean years, for grand construction projects like temples and pyramids, and for the elaborate religious apparatus. This meticulous accounting was essential for managing the annual floods and harvest cycles, guaranteeing stability. The common people, largely agricultural laborers and craftsmen, contributed their output to the state as a fundamental tax, a duty to the pharaoh. Their labor, too, was a significant form of payment, a physical manifestation of allegiance and obligation.
Building monumental structures was not simply conscripted labor. It was the fulfillment of a collective societal obligation, a debt repaid through sweat and toil. The line between taxation, tribute, and public debt blurred considerably in this divinely sanctioned economy, where everyone owed something. An official, vigilant and unyielding, oversaw these transactions, ensuring absolute compliance. The system, while providing unparalleled stability and protection, also demanded unwavering obedience. Failure to contribute wasn't about losing land or personal freedom in the Mesopotamian sense, but about failing the God-King, a far more profound transgression within Egyptian society. The Pharaohs Ledger, therefore, was not merely a record of wealth, but a powerful instrument of control, ensuring the vast machinery of the state continued to turn, sustained by the constant, unyielding flow of the people's toil and grain. It was a societal contract enforced by divine authority, where owing was woven into the very fabric of existence. While Egypt's state economy thrived, archaic Greece grappled with debt, shaping freedom's concept. In city-states like Athens, focus shifted from collective obligation to individual citizens. Debt was a perilous contract, often leading to devastating personal consequences. By the 7th and early 6th centuries BCE, Athens faced severe crisis. Land ownership concentrated among wealthy Upetrida. Most farmers, hekdemeroi, tilled plots but owed 1/6 of their produce. This often led to mounting arrears. A poor harvest, illness, or war could plunge families into inescapable debt. The ultimate collateral was terrifyingly personal: their freedom. Under archaic Athenian law, defaulting on a loan meant a citizen could be sold into slavery with family or exiled. This Greek debt bondage, nexum, mirrored Mesopotamia's chains, threatening nascent citizenship. Widespread practice bred immense social unrest, creating palpable tension between elite and struggling populace. Athens' stability and self-governance teetered precariously. Into this volatile climate emerged Solon, Athenian statesman, lawgiver around 594 BCE. Tasked with mediating the crisis, Solon enacted radical reforms, the seisachteia, or shaking off of burdens. His decree fundamentally restructured Athenian society. Crucially, it abolished existing debts, freed those enslaved for debt, and outlawed using oneself as collateral for future loans. Solon's reforms were a monumental turning point. They didn't redistribute land, but broke hereditary servitude plaguing Athenian citizens. By safeguarding personal liberty from misfortune, Solon laid crucial groundwork for Athenian democracy. This established a fundamental principle: a citizen's freedom was inalienable, transcending economic worth. This bold reckoning prioritized individual liberty, charting a new course for political and social development. While Solon's reforms in Athens marked a significant step towards individual liberty,
Across the Adriatic, Rome's nascent republic wrestled with its own severe form of debt bondage, known as nexum. The contrast was stark. Where Athens began to safeguard its citizens from personal enslavement, early Rome often saw its most vulnerable fall prey to unforgiving creditors. For centuries, the Roman social fabric was strained by this brutal practice, fostering deep divisions. The powerful patrician class, wealthy landowners and aristocrats, largely controlled the burgeoning city-state, acting as primary lenders. Conversely, the vast majority of plebeians, common citizens like farmers, soldiers, and artisans, frequently faced economic hardship. Crop failures, military campaigns, illness, or simply bad fortune could force a plebeian into insurmountable debt, leading them to enter into a nexum contract. This wasn't merely a financial obligation, it was a profoundly personal pledge. Under nexum, the debtor effectively mortgaged their own person, and sometimes those of their dependents, as living collateral. If repayment failed, the nexum, the bondman, became a servile laborer, bound physically and legally to the creditor until the debt was worked off or repaid. This system fueled immense social unrest and was a central grievance during the conflict of the orders, the long struggle between plebeians and patricians for equal rights.
Ancient accounts describe desperate plebeians, scarred from labor, appealing for justice in the crowded forum. The harsh reality of nexum threatened the very concept of Roman citizenship, making personal freedom utterly contingent on economic solvency. The climax of this decades-long struggle arrived with the passage of the Lex Poetelia Papiria in 326 BCE. This landmark legislation, a profound victory for the common people, abolished nexum, explicitly prohibiting creditors from enslaving debtors. It decreed that only a debtor's property, not their person, could be seized for outstanding debts. This monumental reform prevented Roman citizens from being reduced to involuntary servitude by financial distress. It solidified a crucial distinction. While property could be forfeited, a citizen's fundamental liberty was, at last, declared inviolable. Echoing a similar, though earlier, shift witnessed in Greece, Rome, too, had begun to redefine the sacred parameters of freedom and the inherent dignity of its citizens. While Rome grappled with the legal intricacies of nexum and sought to enshrine individual liberty through legislation, another ancient civilization, distinct in its social and religious framework, offered a profoundly different, cyclical solution to the problem of debt and servitude. In ancient Israel, the concept of the Jubilee, or Yovel, stood as a cornerstone of their socio-economic system, a powerful testament to the idea of a societal reset. Rooted in Mosaic law, the Jubilee year was ordained to occur every 50 years, a grand societal reset button designed to prevent the permanent entrenchment of poverty and the concentration of wealth. This was not merely a financial regulation, it was a deeply spiritual and communal practice. During the Jubilee, all Israelite slaves and indentured servants were to be set free. It provided a powerful mechanism for individuals who had sold themselves or their families into temporary servitude due to destitution to regain their freedom and dignity. Furthermore, all ancestral lands that had been sold due to economic hardship were to be returned to their original families. This unique provision ensured that land ownership, fundamental to a family's economic stability and identity, could not be permanently lost. The trumpet call of the shofar heralded the Jubilee, signaling a time of profound reconciliation and restoration.
Imagine the scenes. Families, once dispossessed, joyfully returning to their ancestral fields. Children exploring lands they had only heard about in stories. Indentured servants, their years of labor complete, embracing newfound liberty and reuniting with kin. This sacred cycle underscored the belief that both land and people ultimately belonged to God, and thus could not be permanently alienated or exploited. The Jubilee system served as a divinely mandated safeguard against extreme inequality, aiming to preserve the social fabric and prevent the emergence of a permanent underclass. It represented an ancient radical vision of social justice, emphasizing mercy, community solidarity, and the intrinsic value of human freedom over perpetual economic burden. Though its full implementation throughout history remains a subject of scholarly debate, its enduring ideal offered a stark contrast to the unforgiving debt systems prevalent elsewhere. It carved out a unique space where cyclical renewal, rather than irreversible bondage, defined the path for those ensnared by circumstance.
From the ancient fields of Israel, where the trumpet of Jubilee offered cyclical release, we turn our gaze to medieval Europe, a continent undergoing a profound transformation. As feudal systems gradually gave way to burgeoning towns and an increasingly interconnected world, the nature of economic exchange evolved dramatically. The simple bartering of goods was supplanted by complex networks of trade, necessitating new forms of credit and financial instruments. Merchants, once peripheral figures, became central to this new economic order, forming powerful guilds and pioneering rudimentary banking practices. Within the bustling confines of medieval market squares and emerging financial houses, bills of exchange, letters of credit, and loans became essential tools for commerce. Yet these innovations were met with profound moral and theological scrutiny. The Christian Church, a dominant force in medieval society, steadfastly condemned usury, the practice of lending money at interest, viewing it as a sin. Drawing on scriptural interpretations and the philosophical arguments of scholastic thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, the Church asserted that money was sterile. It could not inherently breed more money. Charging interest was thus seen as profiting from time itself, which belonged only to God, or as exploiting another's need. This powerful prohibition, however, clashed with the practical realities of a growing mercantile economy.
Merchants required capital for ventures, and borrowers often needed funds to avert ruin or seize opportunities. To circumvent strict ecclesiastical laws, ingenious financial mechanisms emerged. Practices like dry exchange involved disguised interest within currency conversion, and seemingly legitimate fees for risk, labor, or delayed payment often masked the true cost of credit. Money changers and early bankers, often operating on the fringes of societal acceptance, played a crucial role in facilitating trade, even as they navigated the precarious moral landscape.
Scholars in monastic libraries and nascent universities grappled with these ethical dilemmas. They debated the fine line between legitimate profit, a fair return for labor and risk, and sinful avarice. Was it permissible to charge for the lucrum cessans, the profit foregone by the lender, or for the damnum emergens, the loss incurred? These intricate arguments gradually chipped away at the absolute prohibition, paving the way for a more nuanced understanding of interest in later centuries. The medieval period thus became a crucible where economic necessity, religious doctrine, and evolving ethical frameworks wrestled for supremacy, laying the groundwork for modern finance while continually questioning the moral implications of debt. Transitioning from the intricate ethical debates of medieval finance, we now confront a profound and enduring consequence of debt that transcends eras: its intrinsic link to power. From the earliest civilizations, society's architecture was often built upon the foundations of obligation, with credit and debt serving as invisible yet formidable tools of social stratification. When we gaze upon the majestic monuments and lavish lives of ancient elites, it is imperative to ask, at what cost were these splendors erected? Who paid the price? Consider the sun-drenched halls of a Mesopotamian palace. Kings and priests presided over vast granaries, their power absolute, their feasts legendary, their raiment embroidered with gold. Yet beyond these walls, the very wealth that sustained such opulence was often extracted from the toil of a populace burdened by debt. A farmer, his harvest failed by drought, might owe grain to the temple or local lord. Unable to pay, his family, his land, even his freedom could become collateral. In ancient Egypt, the state's monumental projects, from pyramids to temples, demanded immense labor. These were financed by a system where the populace often incurred obligations to the state, whether in forced labor or taxes. Defaulting on such duties or personal loans could lead to perpetual servitude, reinforcing a rigid social hierarchy where freedom was a privilege, not a universal right. The Roman Republic, too, witnessed death's destructive power. The institution of nexum bound indebted citizens to their creditors, effectively reducing them to servitude. This fueled intense social unrest between patricians and plebeians. The splendor of a Roman senator's villa, with its sprawling estates and legions of enslaved or indentured laborers, starkly contrasted the small plots of land lost by free farmers, their families scattered, their futures extinguished by unforgiving obligation. Across millennia, this pattern repeats. The accumulation of wealth and power at society's apex often correlates with the imposition of debt and servitude at its base. Debt, in its most brutal historical forms, was not merely a financial transaction. It was a mechanism of control, a legal pathway to human bondage, and a stark delineator of freedom. It stripped individuals of autonomy, transforming citizens into subjects and laborers into chattel. Debt, in its most brutal historical forms, was not merely a financial transaction.
It was a mechanism of control, a legal pathway to human bondage, and a stark delineator of freedom. It stripped individuals of autonomy, transforming citizens into subjects and laborers into chattel. As we reflect on these ancient origins, from the clay tablets of Sumer to the legal codes of Rome, a critical question emerges. How do these historical echoes resonate in our modern financial systems? While outright debt bondage is outlawed, the legacy of economic power dynamics persists. Understanding these deep historical roots is not just an academic exercise. It's a vital step towards discerning the invisible chains that still bind, and ensuring that the pursuit of prosperity does not inadvertently perpetuate new forms of servitude. The price of power has always been paid, often by those least able to afford it, challenging us to consider our collective responsibilities in shaping a more equitable future. As we bridge the chasm between ancient worlds and our own, a critical question emerges. How do these historical echoes of debt's profound power resonate in contemporary financial systems? While physical bondage is thankfully outlawed, the underlying dynamics of obligation, power, and freedom persist, albeit in more abstract, often invisible forms. Understanding these deep historical roots is vital for discerning the subtle chains that still bind, ensuring that prosperity does not inadvertently perpetuate new forms of servitude. The journey through millennia reveals a consistent truth. Debt, at its core, represents a future claim on labor, assets, or potential. What has profoundly shifted is its manifestation. We've moved from palpable, personal servitude, where a person's very being was collateral, to intricate systems of abstract, often digital, obligation. Yet the fundamental tension between creditor and debtor, between individual freedom and financial constraint, remains remarkably similar. An ancient farmer facing Nexum finds a modern parallel in individuals struggling under insurmountable personal loans, or nations grappling with sovereign debt. Consider the evolution of the contract itself, the physical embodiment of obligation. A meticulously inscribed Sumerian clay tablet was a tangible bond. The Roman liber stipendiarius recorded tax duties. Today, these physical artifacts have given way to ephemeral digital ledgers, complex algorithms, and vast interconnected global databases. The interface is different, the scale immeasurably larger, but the foundational concept, a promise of future repayment with consequences for default, endures. Global markets can exert pressure as profound as any ancient decree. This profound historical continuity compels us to critically examine our present. Are we truly free from debt's coercive power? While direct physical bondage is a relic, economic precarity, systemic inequalities, and financial pressures still limit individual autonomy. Recognizing that ancient societies wrestled with similar ethical dilemmas provides invaluable perspective. It urges us to scrutinize financial structures, advocate for equitable systems, and never forget that prosperity must not come at the cost of human dignity. The powerful echoes of history remind us that the struggle for true freedom is an ongoing, evolving endeavor. The powerful echoes of history remind us that the struggle for true freedom is an ongoing, evolving endeavor. The powerful echoes of history remind us that the struggle for true freedom is an ongoing, evolving endeavor.